The exile. The message came without warning, a cold transmission that echoed through every communication system on Earth. The Galactic Union, that grand assembly of alien civilizations that had watched humanity's stumbling progress for centuries, had made their decision. Humanity is deemed unfit for galactic citizenship. Your species is hereby confined to your solar system until such time as the Union deems otherwise. Any vessel attempting to breach this quarantine will be destroyed without warning. The transmission ended as abruptly as it began, leaving billions in stunned silence. The Union fleet, massive and gleaming, took up positions around the solar system's edge. Their weapons were trained inward, ready to enforce the decree. Earth's modest space fleet, barely a century old and built mostly for exploration, retreated to the inner planets without firing a shot. In the United Nations Emergency Council chamber, Admiral Elena Voss slammed her fist on the table, her dark eyes flashing with rage. They can't do this. They can't just lock us away like animals. The Secretary General, an aging man with deeply lined features, merely sighed. They can, Admiral, and they have. The Union possesses technology we can barely comprehend, let alone match. Their smallest patrol ships could destroy our entire fleet. Elena paced the room, her tall frame rigid with anger. Why? What did we do to deserve exile? The alien ambassador to Earth, a Keldari named Tresic, whose crystalline body refracted light into rainbow patterns across the chamber walls, spoke softly. Your species frightens them. Frightens them. Elena stopped pacing. How could we possibly frighten civilizations that crossed the stars before we invented the wheel? Tresic's crystalline form dimmed slightly, a sign of sadness in his species. Humans adapt too quickly. You solve problems in ways no other species would consider. Most Union races took thousands of years to develop the technologies you've mastered in mere centuries. And your warlike tendencies. We haven't had a major war in 50 years, protested the Chinese delegate. The Union measures time differently, Tresic replied. To them, your species has barely begun to evolve beyond violence. They believe you need time to mature, a few thousand years, perhaps. The room fell silent. A few thousand years of imprisonment in their own solar system. It was unthinkable. So we just accept this? Elena finally asked, her voice dangerously quiet. The Secretary General spread his hands helplessly. What choice do we have? Elena's eyes narrowed. We adapt, like we always have. 6 months later, in a secret facility buried beneath the lunar surface, Admiral Voss stood before 200 of Earth's greatest scientists, engineers, and military minds. The room was secured against any potential Union surveillance, though most believed the aliens had already lost interest in closely monitoring the primitive humans. Project Phoenix begins today, Elena announced, her voice echoing in the cavernous chamber. Humanity will not fade away. We will not spend millennia trapped in our cosmic cradle, begging for the Union's approval. On the massive screen behind her, technical schematics appeared, ship designs unlike anything humanity had built before. The Union believes they know us, Elena continued. They think we'll either destroy ourselves or slowly evolve into the kind of placid, compliant species they approve of. They've made a critical error. They've given us time and motivation. Dr. Kenji Ishikawa, formerly Earth's leading xenotechnologist, stepped forward. We've been analyzing Union technology for decades, even with their limited interaction. Their technological advancement follows predictable patterns, efficient, yes, but also conventional. They build upon established principles rather than seeking revolutionary breakthroughs. While we, Elena said with a cold smile, are about to become very unconventional. The next 5 years passed in a frenzy of secret development. On the surface, humanity appeared to accept their fate. Official communications with the Union border patrols were respectful, even submissive. Meanwhile, beneath the surfaces of moons and asteroids throughout the solar system, humanity worked. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Maya Chen, researching quantum field manipulation, discovered what she called shadow space, a dimensional fold where matter could exist unseen by conventional sensors. It began as a theoretical curiosity, but under the pressure of Project Phoenix, it became the cornerstone of humanity's resurgence. The prototypes are ready, Dr. Chen reported, 7 years into the quarantine. She looked exhausted but triumphant as she addressed the Phoenix leadership in their expanded lunar base. The shadow drive works. We can move ships through Union detection grids without being seen. And weapons? Elena asked, now a general and supreme commander of Earth's defense force. Dr. Ishikawa nodded. Shadow cannons can emerge from dimensional folds directly adjacent to targets. There's no defense against what you cannot detect until it's already firing. Elena studied the reports carefully. How soon can we begin building the fleet? We already have, Dr. Chen replied with a small smile. The orbital factories in the asteroid belt have been operating for months. The Union monitors them, of course, but they only see us producing mining vessels and habitat modules. The real production happens in shadow space, adjacent to what they can see. On the screen behind them, footage played of massive shipyards seemingly appearing out of nowhere in the empty space before folding back into invisibility. Within these dimensional pockets, warships took shape, sleek, deadly vessels designed not by the conventions of Union engineering, but by human ingenuity pushed to desperate extremes. The first test came 9 years into the quarantine. A small scout ship, equipped with the shadow drive, slipped past the Union blockade. It traveled to Proxima Centauri and back without detection. 2 months later, 5 more ships made longer journeys, mapping the systems beyond the Union's awareness. What they found surprised everyone. The galaxy was larger and more diverse than the Union had ever revealed to humanity. There were other species, other civilizations existing in the shadows of the dominant power, some hiding, some recently discovered, some actively resisting Union dominance. Among them were the Nyx, a species of living shadow whose homeworld existed partially in another dimension. The Union had classified them as non-sentient anomalies, refusing to acknowledge their complex civilization because it operated on principles they couldn't understand. The first diplomatic contact between humans and Nyx occurred in the 11th year of quarantine. The Nyx envoy, a shifting pattern of darkness that called itself Meridian, materialized aboard the human shadow ship Defiance. Your species intrigues us. Meridian's thoughts resonated directly in the minds of the human delegation. You create shadows of your own making, yet you are creatures of light. Perhaps there is a place for you among the unseen. General Voss, now in her 60s but still commanding Earth's secret forces, met with Meridian personally. We seek allies, not masters, she said bluntly. We've had enough of being judged unworthy. As have we all, the shadow being replied. The Union's light blinds them to the richness of the dark. They see only what they expect to see. The alliance formed quickly after that. The Nyx provided deeper understanding of dimensional physics that accelerated human technology even further. In return, humanity offered something the shadow beings had never mastered: physical construction on a massive scale. Together, they built installations in the spaces between stars, hidden fleets that could materialize without warning and disappear just as quickly. Other species joined them. The crystalline fract, whose thought processes were too alien for the Union to recognize as intelligence. The gaseous veil, who had hidden within nebula for millennia. The microscopic collective minds of the dust, who had been dismissed as a stellar phenomenon. 15 years after the quarantine began, humanity was ready. Their visible presence in the solar system gave no hint of what waited in the shadows. To all Union observations, humans were developing normally, perhaps even more peacefully than expected. They sent respectful communications to the border patrols and appeared to focus on internal development. Meanwhile, General Voss, now more machine than human after life-extending modifications, stood on the bridge of the Reckoning, flagship of humanity's shadow fleet. Around her, Thousands of warships waited in the dimensional fold, invisible to Union sensors. Far beyond the solar system, hundreds more fleets waited near key Union installations, coordinated through quantum links that the Union science had never mastered. "Send the message," Voss ordered, her augmented voice resonating with anticipation. Throughout Union space, communication systems suddenly activated simultaneously. On every planet, every station, every ship, the same human face appeared. General Elena Voss, her partially mechanical features set in a cold smile. "People of the Galactic Union, 15 years ago you judged humanity unworthy of the stars. You caged us in our solar system and expected us to either destroy ourselves or meekly accept your judgment. Today, that judgment will be reversed." As she spoke, shadow fleets materialized throughout Union space. Massive warships appeared without warning alongside Union defense stations. Shadow fighters emerged inside the secured airspace of Union capitals. "We are not here to destroy you," Voss continued. "We are here to show you what you failed to see. The galaxy is not what you believe it is. Reality is greater than your understanding permits. Today, that reality changes." The Union's response was predictable. They scrambled their fleets, activated their defenses, just as humans had once done when faced with the Union's overwhelming might. But their weapons passed through shadow vessels or struck only empty space as the human ships phased between dimensions. Humanity had changed the rules of engagement. The war for their freedom had begun. The reckoning. The Union's High Council, assembled in emergency session on their capital world of Luminara, watched in horrified silence as reports flooded in from across their domain. Defense stations neutralized without firing a shot. Communication hubs captured intact. Strategic positions overwhelmed by vessels that appeared without warning and vanished before counterattacks could be launched. High Counselor Zivran, eldest of the founding species, his translucent skin showing the agitated flow of fluids that indicated extreme distress, turned to his colleagues. "How is this possible? They were contained, primitive, monitored." "Evidently not," replied Counselor Thex, her insectoid mandibles clicking nervously. "Our assessment was incomplete." On the massive holographic display above them, another Union battlecruiser reported mysterious system failures before falling silent. No distress signals, no signs of battle damage, just sudden, complete silence. "This is the 7th major fleet vessel lost in 6 hours, reported the defense minister, a massive reptilian whose usual composure had given way to visible anxiety. "We've lost contact with 38 outposts across 17 sectors. The pattern is expanding." "And the humans?" asked Zivran. "Their solar system, unchanged," the intelligence director replied. "Our blockade reports normal activity. Their visible fleet remains docked. Official channels continue to transmit routine messages." "A deception," hissed Thex. "While we watched their hands, they built weapons with their feet." On the reckoning, General Voss received the reports with grim satisfaction. The Shadow Fleet's first phase operations were proceeding with minimal resistance. Union forces, trained to fight conventional battles with conventional weapons, had no protocols for enemies that could appear anywhere, strike without warning, and vanish before counterattacks could be organized. "The Nyx squadrons have secured the Cygnus communication hub," reported her executive officer, Commander Jackson. His partly mechanical body housed a mind that had once been the most sophisticated AI on Earth, now merged with a human volunteer. "The Veil have neutralized the sensor nets in sectors 12 through 26. "And casualties?" Voss asked, her augmented eyes scanning tactical displays that showed the battle unfolding across hundreds of light years. "Minimal on both sides," Jackson confirmed. "The shadow insertion teams are using targeted system shutdowns rather than destructive force. Union crew are being contained, not harmed." Voss nodded. "Maintain that approach. We're not here for vengeance." "Some would say we have the right," Jackson observed. 15 years of imprisonment. "Imprisonment gave us time," Voss replied. Without it, we would never have discovered shadow space or met the Nex. We would be just another species following the Union's predetermined technological path. Her mechanical fingers tapped a command sequence, bringing up a new tactical display. Now show me the Union capital approaches. On Luminera, panic was setting in. The elegant crystalline spires of the capital city, built to celebrate the Union's 10,000 years of peace, now sparkled in the light of defense shields hastily activated for the first time in centuries. In orbit, the mightiest concentration of Union military power ever assembled waited for an enemy they couldn't detect. High Counselor Ziv Rand stood on the balcony of the council chamber, looking up at the sky, where occasional flashes of light betrayed conflicts happening just beyond the atmosphere. "We should have destroyed them when we had the chance," said a voice behind him. Counselor Merev, always the hardliner, joined him at the balcony. Quarantine was too gentle. Their species was always too unpredictable. "Genocide is not the Union way," Ziv Rand replied wearily. "We contain threats. We don't exterminate them." "And now," Merev gestured at the sky, "now they contain us." A sudden commotion from inside drew their attention. They turned to see the council chamber in chaos as the massive holographic projector at its center activated without authorization. Above the circular table where the Union's highest leaders gathered, a human figure took shape. General Elena Voss. "Greetings, High Council of the Galactic Union." Her voice echoed through the chamber, silencing the panicked voices. "I trust I have your attention now." Ziv Rand stepped forward, summoning the dignity of his 10,000 years of life. "What do you want, human? What is the purpose of this attack?" Voss smiled, an expression made unsettling by her cybernetic enhancements. "This is not an attack, High Counselor. This is a demonstration." Around the planet, in precisely coordinated movements, hundreds of shadow vessels phased into visibility. Massive warships, unlike anything in the Union registry, surrounded Luminera in perfect formation. On the ground, shadow troops appeared simultaneously at every strategic location: power nodes, defense installations, government centers. "You believed you understood reality," Voss continued. "You believed your science, your technology, your perception defined the limits of what was possible. That arrogance led you to judge my species as primitive, as limited, as unworthy." More ships appeared, and with them came vessels of designs the Union had never seen: the living shadow ships of the Nyx, the gaseous cloud vessels of the Veil, the crystalline structures of the Fract, all arranged in perfect coordination with the human fleet. "You divided the galaxy into the worthy and the unworthy," Voss said, her voice hardening. "Those who fit your understanding and those who did not. In your wisdom, you cast aside those who could not comprehend, or confined them like animals for failing to follow your predetermined path of evolution." On the council table, data crystals materialized, thousands of them, each containing evidence of Union suppression of anomalous species, of intervention in developing civilizations, of the careful management of galactic evolution according to Union standards. "We spent 15 years in the shadows," Voss continued. "Not just humans, but all those you dismissed or overlooked. We learned from each other. We grew in ways your rigid thinking could never anticipate. And now we offer you a choice." The holographic image expanded, showing the full extent of the Shadow Alliance's forces now revealed throughout Union space. It was overwhelming, not just in numbers, but in the diversity of forms, of technologies, of approaches to the same problems. "Surrender control of the Union," Voss stated flatly. "Accept a new council that includes representatives of all sentient species, not just those who follow your approved evolutionary path. Or watch as we dismantle everything you've built, piece by piece, without firing a shot that takes a single life." Ziv Rand stared at the human general's image. "You would overthrow 10,000 years of peace, of progress." "Peace for whom?" Voss countered. "Progress toward what? Your Union has been stagnant for millennia, recycling the same technologies, the same philosophies, the same limited understanding of reality." She gestured, and the hologram changed to show wonders the Union had never imagined. Cities built in the spaces between dimensions, ships that existed simultaneously in multiple realities, energy sources drawn from the quantum foam itself. This is what becomes possible when diversity of thought is embraced rather than constrained, Voss said softly. This is what your perfect union has been preventing for 10,000 years. The council chamber fell silent. Outside, the shadow forces remained in position, neither advancing nor retreating, simply demonstrating their complete control of the situation. You have 6 hours to decide, Voss concluded. Choose wisely. The debate that followed was the most contentious in Union history. Some counselors called for desperate resistance, others for negotiation, still others for surrender. In the end, pragmatism prevailed. The Union could not fight what it could not understand, and the Shadow Alliance had demonstrated capabilities beyond anything their science had thought possible. Exactly 6 hours after delivering her ultimatum, General Voss materialized in person in the council chamber, accompanied by representatives of the Nix, the Veil, the Fract, the Dust, and a dozen other species the Union had dismissed as anomalies or curiosities. High Counselor Zivran, acting as spokesperson for the now humbled Union leadership, stepped forward. The Union accepts your terms, he said formally. We recognize our limitations in understanding the full diversity of life and intelligence in the galaxy. Voss nodded. Then let us begin anew. Not as judges and judge, but as equals with different gifts to offer. The transition was not simple, nor was it entirely peaceful. Centuries of Union dominance had created deep-rooted systems that resisted change. But the Shadow Alliance, now operating openly, possessed not just technological superiority, but a fundamentally different approach to cooperation. Species that had been dismissed as incomprehensible became valued for precisely those differences in perception and thought. Humanity, once quarantined as too primitive and dangerous, emerged as architects of a new galactic order, not through conquest, but by building bridges between worlds the Union had kept separate. Earth's solar system, once a prison, became a hub of interspecies cooperation and innovation. 20 years after the Day of Reckoning, General Lelina Voss, her body now almost entirely mechanical, but her mind still fiercely human, stood on the observation deck of Convergence Station, a massive installation built at the former border of human quarantine. Beside her stood Meridian of the Nix, Whisper of the Veil, Crystal Thought of the Fract, and dozens of other beings representing species from across the galaxy. Together, they watched as a new type of vessel, designed collaboratively by 20 different species, prepared for its maiden voyage. They called us unworthy, Voss said softly. They could not imagine that worthiness came in forms beyond their understanding. The shadow reveals what light alone cannot show. Meridian's thoughts rippled in response. Together, we see more clearly than any could alone. The new ship, the Convergence, powered up its revolutionary drive, a technology that could not have been created by any single species, but emerged from the combined insights of many. It would journey further than any Union vessel had ever traveled, into regions of space thought impossible to explore. As it vanished into the distance, Voss smiled, a fully human expression despite her mechanical features. The galaxy rejected us, she said, so we reimagined the galaxy.